part of our community and participate in various activities and events at the university. Despite the war, we did not want to change the tradition. And because we need so much reflection and sharing it with our friends and partners, we decided to have the event for our global community. So it is my great pleasure to moderate today an event, Recovery of Ukraine, Global Academic Solidarity. And I know that we are truly international at the moment, thanks to online presence. We have participants registered from United States of America, Canada, Mexico, Germany, Netherlands, Switzerland, Poland, France, Italy, Austria, Hungary, Czech Republic, Lithuania, Estonia, Croatia, Belgium, Sweden, Norway, Romania, Spain, UK, Ireland, Argentina, Peru, Lebanon, United Arab Emirates, Philippines, India. We are so blessed to have so many friends who support us, believe in us, and pray for us. And of course, we have a lot of participants from Ukraine. Allow me now to present our distinguished panel, which I have a privilege to moderate today, and let's move into the discussion. Well, first of all, we have with us Archbishop Borys Gudziak, Metropolitan of Philadelphia, President of the Ukrainian Catholic University. Let's give applause to Bishop Borys. We have online Vlad Rashkovan, who is Alternative Executive Director of International Monetary Fund, representing Ukraine and 14 other states in the IMF Executive Board. But I would like to say something else. Previously to that, he served as Deputy Governor and member of the Board of the National Bank of Ukraine, and he was responsible for very many changes and transformations in the banking system of Ukraine. Let's welcome Vladislav. I hope Vlad can hear us, and I hope we will start the conversation soon. We also have Anna Novosad with us. She's the Ukrainian educational activist. She's co-founder of the charitable foundation Save Ed, and she used to serve for many years, despite of being very young, she used to serve for many years on various positions in the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine, including service as minister in 2019 and 2020. Let's have a warm welcome to Anna. We don't see Anna, but I assume that she is there, and we will see her as soon as we start the conversation. And I have with me two of my colleagues, Dmytro Sherengovsky, who is UCU Vice Rector for Academic Affairs and Internationalization. But he's also a specialist in political science, and he has great interest in various topics of political science as international relations and conflicts, human rights, international politics, regional and global security. And I am amazed how Dmytro combines his operational work at UCU, as he is in charge of the whole educational process, but he still manages to write important and articles about Ukraine and war, both in Ukrainian and English. So let's welcome Dmytro. Great, we also have Vlad and Anna on the screen. And the last but not least is Volodymyr Turchynovskyy, Dean of UCU Faculty of Social Science, and also Director of UCU International Institute for Ethics and Contemporary Issues. And Volodymyr is also an editor of Ethics in the Global World, Reflections on Civic Virtues journal. Welcome. So the name and the topic of today's conversation is recovery of Ukraine. I think for every Ukrainian, it's not only a difficult time right now, but it's also a time of great hope. And I think talking about recovery, and especially about human capital in recovery, this is something where we see our future. So I would like to start with Vlad, and I would like to start with my set of questions. When we talk about recovery, the numbers are very big. they are even scary, not only for Ukrainians, but they are quite scary for the whole international community. What are the overall needs of Ukraine right now? Where should we focus? Because obviously we cannot achieve everything. We should make some priorities. And also, where is human capital in these priorities? Do we talk enough about human capital in the recovery, or should there be more attention to this element? Vlad, the floor is yours.
For me.
Just a moment, I don't think we can hear you.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, you can talk now.
Do you hear me? Sophia, do you hear me now? Sophia, do you hear me? Okay, now I see that you hear me. Yeah. So first, thanks for inviting me. You know that there is no doubt that Russia is the aggressor in this unprovoked, unjustified, illegal invasion of Ukraine. Though Ukraine has been fighting with Russia not only for its territory or freedom or independence or even for our European choice. Ukraine is fighting, to preserve somehow, European values, the humanism also, democracy, the globalized world. And I believe our army is protecting the liberal idea concept, multiculturalism, tolerance, inclusiveness. So all those atoms of the current global order, which apparently the Putin's Russia stands against. And so this war is a war not for territories. This is the war for senses, ideas, and dreams. And this is why Ukraine should be supported by the world and supported now. And you ask about the principles. So this is clearly one of the key principles. Ukraine needs to be supported now. And other principles are, in terms of money, you ask also about money, we need to get grants first, loans next, and also later investments, because without the private capital, Ukraine will be very hard to reconstruct. And this is an important sequence. We may not probably expect the investments coming immediately now, but we need to work with our partners to get the grants and loans. Second principle is build back better. Because we have a unique chance to get rid of the Soviet legacy also in our architecture, in our infrastructure, in our urban planning, and we must not miss this chance. And there are many others, but I think other principles and other people will say, so let me focus more on resources, which are needed. The war is very resourceful enterprise. We need a humanitarian, the military. Do you hear me? Humanitarian, military, logistical, sanctions, short-term financing for survival, long-term for reconstruction, and therefore, and also, as I said, we need some kind of anchoring, of our dreams, which means the entering or accessing the European Union. But back to your question about the recovery, let me split this to the four major, the parts, and maybe even sequencing, and later say something about the human capital here. First, we need finances to cover our immediate needs. Immediate financing needs to pay pensions, social subsidies, support internally displaced people, and the needs since February 24 were around like $5 billion per month. The economy now slightly recovers, so I expect the next year needs will be a little bit less, and probably on the level of $3 billion, but it makes our next year needs are more than $30 billion. Dollars. And we are working now with our partners, with G7 countries, international institutions, IMF, World Bank, to get this money. And this is a priority number one in terms of money, because without surviving, there won't be a recovery. And recovery planning itself should not be an excuse of not doing what is necessary to do when the war is going on. But I'm sure we will manage this, priority number one. The priority number two, we need to go through the winter. because I mean the energy resources, gas, electricity. I'm not an expert. I don't know the exact numbers, but I know that government also works with our partners, to secure the energy supplies, and this is a priority number 2. And again, without surviving the winter, won't be much of recovery. But again, I'm sure we will manage it as well. The third, we need money for the fast recovery, which means rebuild the liberated cities, roads, bridges, schools, hospitals, and preparing them also now for the winter. And the estimated cost here is around like a $15-17 billion. And this is where the projects already understood, the ministries know what to do. And we also need this money to support business, because without, the business surviving, because without the live business, there will be not much recovery again and reconstruction in the future. And finally, we need the money for reconstruction. Last week, the World Bank issued the rapid damage and need assessment report for Ukraine in this war, and the figures are, as you said, Sophia, pretty scary. And as of June, they're the following, just for our audience and for the dialogue. As of June, the physical damage for the infrastructure estimated on the level of $97 billion, and this is about housing, transport, industrial, and infrastructure objects. Second is we have economic losses, which means that something which Russia, stole a part of our potential GDP, so stole from our, future generations, and this is around like 252, as I said. And the third is about the reconstruction needs. The reconstruction needs on the level around $349 billion estimations, which are 150% of our 2021 GDP. And the concept behind this amount is, as I said, is to build back better. Therefore, the reconstruction needs are, is not to restore what we had before, but to build a more green, more digital economy, more inclusive also, less barriers. And these immediate, and there are also in the report, they also included the immediate needs for the next 18 months, and this amount is around $105 billion. And as you see, this is slightly bigger than that. I said about 15-17 billion, which already, our ministries know how to deal with that. And therefore, there will be more job also about the planning of the reconstruction. And, finally, in this introduction about the human capital, we do whatever we do now, also fight not for territories, as I said, but for people, for our people. And many people fled the country. We need to be thankful for sure for hosting countries, for countries which, host our millions of our refugees. I was in Warsaw like 10 days ago, and one person in government said, we want to welcome Ukrainians here as at home. And I said, we very much thankful for that, but I would like them to stay more as the best guests, because the home is in Ukraine, and we need to make sure that Ukraine will get home, will come back. Reconstruction is important, but I think that the new vision for Ukraine, or the vision for the new Ukraine, is also important. New social contract is important. And while reconstruction to give house and roads, the vision to give people the dream, but also, this is, an opportunity. And I believe that the word opportunity for our people will be, but not only for our people, will be the most important word in the post-war Ukraine. Let me stop here.
Much. I would like to ask our technical team to check with Anna, yes, while we continue the conversation, because I think there's some technical issue. Vlad, thank you very much, and I would like to kind of endorse and very much pay attention to one of your thoughts, that this is the war about also senses, ideas, vision for the future, and values. And I would like to now turn to Volodymyr, and we talk quite often at UCU that Ukraine now looks like a laboratory of social transformation. What implications can it have on human capital? Because it can have different implications, right, in Ukraine. And what should we learn from that? Especially when we talk about very intangible things, because Vlad counted everything in numbers, but there are so many things when we talk about human capital and social capital which cannot be calculated immediately.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sophia, and I'm really very happy to be here today, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. We just heard some kind of stunning numbers from Vladislav, and let me try to look at the situation more from say anthropological or sociological or social science viewpoint. At where we are, and this is because human capital isn't just a kind of an abstract concept. There's some kind of real people behind that, and it's important to realize, it's important to understand our context, just to see and understand what's the dynamic or dynamics might be with the human capital. And I was trying to kind of reflect upon the last 200 days of this war, and just asking myself as to what are some important things that we could underline and state about Ukraine. And Ukraine is a very complex thing. I mean, Ukraine is many things, but I think a few things are really important to mention here in this context. And one thing is that Ukraine is a battlefield. Ukraine is a battlefield, and Ukraine probably will be a battlefield for some significant time, and with all implications which are connected to this battlefield situation. I think also that Ukraine is a solidarity hub. In fact, Ukraine became and established itself as a kind of international solidarity hub. And I'm not really surprised that solidarity came into picture, but I'm truly amazed that Ukraine played a leadership role in establishing this kind of solidarity connection. Ukraine is very actively, I believe, sharing in that gift of solidarity and plays a very active role. So I'm thinking of our country as a kind of solidarity hub. I think that Ukraine also establishes itself as a moral ground, and I think it's really very critical and important to understand this war as a kind of existential war, but also a war between good and evil. And I think that I think Ukraine kind of is recovering those very important moral concepts and ideas, and our country is paying very kind of high price for this. So moral ground is another kind of context where Ukraine finds itself in. I think that Ukraine, and this has been already mentioned, is certainly becoming a recovery site. A recovery site for many, many years to come. And I think that what will be critically important in that context is that we proved our resilience already, but I think that we should be kind of working to kind of increase and build and not to lose our resilience. And I think that the recovery formula should be resilience plus innovations, essentially. So that would be something which I think would be very critical to establish itself as a platform where resilience and innovations do the job we need. And essentially, I think by mentioning this, I'm kind of coming to your question, Sophia, about social lab, because this is in fact what's going on here. This is about having opportunity to develop certain new ways of kind of building society, of establishing resilience, of thinking about the reconstruction, of thinking about the leadership in this situation. And I'm kind of asking myself as to what might be kind of boosters or kind of human capital boosters. And I clearly see that one of them is kind of the international. I mean, Ukraine, for all these 200 days, it's been kind of immersed in a very intense and very fruitful international partnership and cooperation. So essentially, this is like an international battlefield, if you wish. It's international solidarity hub. It's international kind of moral ground. It's international recovery site. And I think that now, given this kind of conversation, I think our appeal would be that we really want to be this kind of international social lab as well. And this is where we would invite our colleagues. This is where we would need kind of expertise just to be able to rebuild, to develop new models and ideas about the future of this country. And I think these are the ways of somehow kind of thinking about the human capital, and I think that somehow, I think my idea would be that we should kind of develop or establish human capital, which enables us, I mean, to go through these kind of challenges, namely kind of rebuilding the country, kind of building, exploring solidarity, exploring moral values and virtues as well. So this is somehow, I think, is kind of my understanding, my vision that human capital should be kind of helping, or kind of should become kind of adjusted to complete those role and establish the future of this country. Well, let me probably stop here.
So, if I may clarify, if I understood right your words, that many decisions which Ukrainians are making, they influence not only our future, they influence the future of very many countries, and they probably influence the vision if democracy is a valid notion. Is democracy something, if in Ukraine people are ready to die for democracy, then it cannot be, maybe it can be, but should it be so much questioned in many other countries? And if we are such a lab, which probably researchers from all over the world cannot create artificially, but probably if we are such a lab by fortune or unfortune, then probably there is much to learn from Ukraine right now, and this could be done together with our international partners and friends.
Well, I think you're kind of absolutely right. So this is basically the whole concept and idea that I think one of the key things of kind of rebuilding or building or influencing human capital is education as such. So I think there is a great opportunity at the present moment somehow to use the energy of Ukrainian people. So all these kind of things like solidarity and moral things, and I think there is a great potential in kind of moving forward and establishing and doing even research at this time, and even the fact that we are kind of having this conversation in the middle of this war, thinking about the future of Ukraine. I think that sends very important signals to our international friends and partners that, I mean, these people that are kind of willing to think about the future of Ukraine, they are willing to invest their kind of resources and their kind of intellect, their brain into developing new models and ways of building, let's say, security. One of the most important things which we should be kind of taking care of is related to the security and the kind of rebuilding the whole security infrastructure. And this is a huge, immense field for our international partners somehow to invest themselves into this kind of thinking. There are lots of different things connected to the kind of military sphere and military world and kind of military kind of infrastructure. There's another thing which I was trying to emphasize. I think that we are kind of building this kind of solidarity infrastructure, and so I can think of a variety of different social kind of oriented courses, as a matter of fact, which are kind of built on this kind of solidarity movement, and which kind of export, if you wish, this kind of solidarity experiences and movements to kind of the larger world. So this might be another opportunity in terms of developing programs or developing courses which are kind of socially oriented. Ukraine becomes a very interesting field and research field for field trips. I can imagine that for many students, whether they're kind of doing management studies or business studies or even history, I mean, Ukraine is a place where they have to be. I mean, they're kind of invited. I mean, it's a time to come here, and it might be, I mean, someone might think whether this is kind of a risky thing just to establish a collaboration or partnership with Ukraine, but I think it's a greater risk not to take this risk. To speak honestly, and I think, well, if you look at the kind of at the world of politics or the world of diplomacy or the military world, I mean, they've made their choice already. I think by their estimates, it's a greater risk not to get involved in Ukraine at this moment. So I think academia and business probably should be kind of following that path and kind of moving into Ukraine, and we'd be happy to welcome you here and work with you.
Well, thank you. Let's move on, and I would like to move to Dmytro, and let me pass the mic. Dmytro, I would like to talk with you a little bit about social contract, and there are a lot of discussions about new social contract in Ukraine, how various stakeholders can work together. We talked a lot after 2014, how business, NGOs, state, other players, politicians, how they should be together. And we know that we are often not together. Maybe that's all right not to be together and have different points of views. But right now, country is in a state when everybody got together. And can we learn anything from this lesson, and how we can take the best from this lesson with us into the future, into recovery of Ukraine, because we are talking about recovery of Ukraine.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this all are 1 million questions, and it's really hard to find the good answers for that. But to start in, as a political scientist, I should say that it's usually hard in terms of political science to do experiments, because sometimes it takes a lot of time, sometimes it's really costly, sometimes it's really hard because you can't get and put all society into an experiment. And here is what we have, unfortunately, unluckily, but all the country and all the Ukrainian society is actually about doing an experiment. So that's what Ukraine can grant to the whole world, like to do a number of experiments. And I want to build a little bit on what was talked here previously, and I should say that the main question is here how to unite all the stakeholders and build. It's actually the two questions. So the first one is what we should build. This is the first question. Should we build like modernization, social modernization, economic modernization? Should we build a state that is based on the human dignity? Should we build more healthcare? Should we build more prosperity? Should we build security, something else? Should we build everything together? So this is a top question. And this is a fundamental question. And actually, all the others questions are about methodology, so how we could achieve it, how we could build it. And when we are thinking about the new social contract, is actually have these two questions, what and how. And if we agree that we already know the answer, because I was mentioning some of the parts of what we together understand, like the current and contemporary liberal democracy or working democracy, and what we understand by the welfare state. Yep. And if we even see such things that are declared in constitution, in Ukrainian constitution, so we should think how to achieve all these KPIs. And we should think also what we should do in the different way, because we already have all these good things proclaimed, not only in Ukraine, but in any of the democratic state, but sometimes societies failed to do this. And here, if we're thinking about the new ways and the new methods and new organizational design, we definitely come to the idea of what is called the social innovation. So I'm quoting here like what OECD as an organization called. So it's called the social innovation. So how to do differently some steps, some projects, some social contracts with new stakeholders in order to achieve better life, in order to achieve better conditions. It's called social innovation. And actually I just want to quote that OECD is stating that the tap of potential of social innovation is, I'm quoting, enabling policy framework that is needed to support public, non-profit, and private actors to co-construct and implement socially innovative solutions, and thereby contribute to address socio-economic issues, build stronger territorial resilience, and better respond to future shocks. So that's what already done, so we already have an answer a little bit. And I think that one of the most important things about social innovation is actually doing that. So our social contract in Ukraine is and should be built on the idea how it should develop social innovation in our society. And that's, we have an ability to build inside of Ukraine right now, but also we can grant it as a lesson to different countries, because it's not typically Ukrainian question, it's standard Ukrainian question. The only difference is that we are starting to achieve the social innovation in very dramatic conditions of the traumatized country, when the human dignity and the personal dignity and when the dignity of the many players of society is actually crushed, totally crushed. When we have no resources to rebuild it, to reconstruct it, and when we are still in the conditions of war. So looking back into the 6 months of our previous experience, that was a question about, I can see at least 3 ideas that Ukrainians have already tested, and these are not unique ideas, but we have already tested them in really hard conditions, and it seems that they are efficient. So the first is a bottom-up approach. So where innovations are better built and better implemented by direct stakeholders rather than top-level administration. So we see it in volunteer movement, we see it also and saw it in military, we saw it in local administration, even here in UCU. A number of good initiatives that are still alive were built from the top, bottom. And the only thing that UCU administration was doing simply provide them a framework and an ability and resources and some good advices of how we can develop or what you can do better. But this bottom-up approach is one of the things that was already practiced by Ukrainians. And that's also what usually social innovation theory of connected differences emphasize, that you should go and see what is directly needed on that level, what is actually seeing this problem. The second idea is about networking and alliances. That's quite important things. Volunteer movement was a part of the social resilience, and this is fantastic example. So just look inside the volunteer movement that is happening here right now in Ukraine. So a number of organizational tasks, logistics, resources, simply built between different people that sometimes they don't know each other. So what is keeping them together? It's simply need and trust. Need and trust, 2 things that are actually organizing. So, and that's working. That's working. So new social contract is about how to achieve more trust between all these stakeholders, between public stakeholders, between private stakeholders, non-governmental stakeholders, international stakeholders. How we can bring more trust to our society, how we can bring more trust into the policy making, into business execution, and so on and so forth. And the final thing is about putting resources where they are needed, exactly to avoid some misallocation of resources. And here I'm talking not only about costs, direct finances, but also about the intellectual resources, also about the communicational resources, and different kinds of other resources. So what we also had experienced in terms of the international community, when we had a need to make some stories more visible, and we had this story much more visible, that's helped a lot in resilience. When we were not hiding problem, but showing that this is a problem. When we had difficulties and we need some help with finances to support the ongoing activities or some military or humanitarian help, it was highly understood. And it directly was the answer to the direct challenge. So what unite all these 3 lessons is actually knowledge. how to build this. And I think that Ukrainians have to some kind all this knowledge how to build it. The only thing that we can do here, and that is why international academia is so important, that we can build and develop like some frameworks of how, as a scientist, how as the scholars, we can name it, brand it, and how we can work with that. So that's one of the most important roles for academia, that actually everybody can help in that. And to sum it up, I just want to share my personal vision about how we can use the social innovation framework for Ukraine, to recover Ukraine, to rebuild Ukraine. It's actually when you have some challenge or a problem, let's take Ukrainian problem, any of the social problem, personal, whatever, then you can use that approach of Ukraine being laboratory. So you have a right to do some experiments and to act in a different way, and the government systems and the private systems understand that. So we just need to add a little bit more resources, costs, intellectual resources, communicational resources. That's actually what international community can bring a lot to that. And then we just need to act. So legalizing that. So I can see that the basis of social contract is actually like using social innovation as the main framework for action.
So bottom-up approach, networking, alliances, and trust, and how to and where to put the resources in the right way. Now I would like to thank you, Dmytro. Now I would like to turn to Anna, and obviously you made really interesting choice right now, because you were on fellowship in the United States last year. You were learning about best educational systems and schools, and now you return to Ukraine, and you commit a lot of time to find resources to rebuild education, and especially in Chernihiv region. And we were talking about quite high-level, sophisticated things at the moment, but which are actually very important to have them as senses and as ideas. How education, and especially rebuilding education, how can it help us? Can it help us? How important it is? Because we also see how our enemies are changing immediately education system where they come. Do we do it quickly enough? Because sometimes I'm thinking maybe we are too slow with education system, and we build houses, we take care of other very important urgent things, but if you don't focus on education enough, then it might be too late.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sophia, and please let me know if you hear me well. You do. All right. Great. Hello, everyone. First and foremost, let me thank you for inviting me. It's a big honor to be here today with you. You mentioned my fellowship in the US, and indeed I was there researching the best high schools in the US. It was the wish to establish my own private school when I'm back. But my partner and the colleague who was supposed to be the principal in that school got bumped and died in Borodyanka. The last time I spoke with him was on 26th of December, so to me, all my previous life that was before 24th does not exist anymore. And to me, there is no purpose just caring about my own safety. There has to be, a larger purpose in whatever we all of us do right now. I work a lot right now on the ground in Chernihiv region, in Kyiv region, in Zhytomyr, and what I see are a few things. So first and foremost, Russia targets our education very, very deliberately. It's not only war against Ukrainians, it's a very blatant war against our schools, against our universities, and against our kindergartens. And that is so obvious. And they do it not only because there might be our soldiers, so that they target them with missiles. They do it based on the very ideological reasons. And we can see that on the occupied territories where they burn or throw away our books. We can see that in cases like Katuzhanka, it's a little school, it's a little village in Kiev region where I work with, and the Russians used that school as their sort of center of command during the Battle of Kiev. And the principal told me that when they came there and they occupied the school, they took down all the portraits of Ukrainian heroes and poets and so on, and they put up portraits of Lenin. So what has to be in minds of people who come to us with tanks and they bring portraits of Lenin? That's not only military aim, right? It's way more. And I think this is Volodymyr was speaking about research, and I think that international community failed completely researching how Russia has been ideologized and weaponized in education for decades and decades, teaching their kids how to hate Ukrainians, Poles, nations that are inside Russia. So to me, it's so evident that education also plays a huge role in causing this war, because it got so ideologized in Russia itself. We have a huge number of schools that are destroyed, more than 260. Around 2,000 are very severely damaged, and I see that in Chernihiv, and once again, this is a testament that Russia targets schools very explicitly and very deliberately. Out of 34, 27 are destroyed. That's a huge number, also taking into account that around 80% of children are back to the city. We have a huge number of children that are right now abroad, and according to the recent data of the Ministry of Education, the most recent one as of early September, around 600,000 stayed abroad for their studies, right? So this is probably that number that we might, I'm not saying we will, but we might never see again, right? So answering your question about the recovery, you asked like whether education will play a role in the recovery. However, I think that we cannot use world in future tense. It already plays a role, because a lot of Ukrainian women and a lot of Ukrainian families are actually choosing whether to return to Ukraine. First, based on the security reasons, and secondly, whether there is a school, whether there is access to education. So to Ukrainians, this question is of paramount importance, and I see that in those communities that I work with, if there is a school, people are returning more eagerly and with kind of more resolve. So for us, for Ukraine, this is a huge tool. Education is a huge tool to get our people back, but also to kind of provide an immediate revival tool to our people. I remember seeing these kids in Chernihiv when it was just liberated in April and May, after it was kind of cleaned, and you see these kids coming to their bombed schools, completely bombed schools, but where, for instance, a playground survived, and they play on the debris of this school, on this playground, and it's really surreal, right? And they are kind of craving for socialization and for fun and for careless living. So this is exactly what we have to give to them through education. Apart from that, I do think that in the future, education, it's a bit of an obvious thing. However, it will be a backbone of our resilience. And we don't have to be naive, and no one is, obviously, that Russia will not disappear anytime soon. It will be our enemy for a long time, and we have to be prepared in terms of our military capacity. But for that, we have to have people. So in my view, focusing on establishing or reinvigorating a very strong scientific science kind of basis in Ukrainian education is a must for our country right now, and focusing on setting up scientific lyceums, or at least trying to save those that we had before. I think it's a priority task for our future ability to defend ourselves. Apart from that, on kind of more humanitarian point of view, education is and will be fundamental to our capacity and as a state and as a society, because I I'm convinced that if we do not rethink or think through and discuss with our children in schools what's happening right now and what are the causes for that, how history is important in that, and how civic education is important in that, we will not move very far from where we are right now. Another thing that I see, and like I work in little villages trying to help them to fundraise funds to rebuild their schools, like in Kyiv region. Kyiv region is extremely poor region. It might sound absurd, but it's very poor region in this remote little villages, especially next to the border. And you see that these people, unlike Irpin or Bucha or Chernihiv, they will not get immediate help any year soon. So this huge gap in social economic situation and in access to quality education will just get wider and wider. Before that, we had almost 3 years of difference between kids that study in rural areas and their peers in urban areas. Right now, when in so many villages, these kids have no access neither to kindergarten or to school, it will be even larger disaster, So right now it's a huge challenge how to help those who are in more vulnerable position than children, even in Chernihiv, or not even speaking about Kyiv. And also you asked about international partners, and I would like to refer to what Volodymyr said, and you, Volodymyr, mentioned signals. I work a lot right now with donors, and I do think that they are very bad with signals. I think they're very slow and very bad with signals, because we see that actually our recovery is happening faster, not thanks to them, but thanks to people who live in their communities and try to rebuild things that have been destroyed themselves. So, for instance, the city of Chernihiv was freed in April. Maybe by winter, we will have first windows placed by international donors. I think it's shamelessly slow. And the same thing will happen with liberated Kharkiv region, right? So I think in this situation, Ukraine and the government and local governments and all of us, civil society and universities, have to be very assertive, because we know what we need. We know what could be the solutions, right? And we have to be, in a good way, very pushy about how they can help us. Because oftentimes the international partners come here and they, like what I really amazed to hear from them is when they say, it's so hard to work in Ukraine, unlike Afghanistan or Syria or African countries. You have government, you have system, you have good schools. Like, how can we help you? They feel lost and they don't know. And this is where we have to come to the forefront with our solutions that we have all the rights to implement here in Ukraine.
Thank you, Anna. So very often we get the question, how can we help you? And it means that every single Ukrainian has to have the answer. How can people help us? Because if we don't have this answer, nobody can figure out about instead of us. And everyone has a limited set of time, resources, finance, and it's very important that every single Ukrainian is very clear with our friends and international partners and donors what can be done, very specifically. Vladyko, now I would like to come to you and talk a little bit about how can we put human dignity in the center of the recovery plan, because it's told a lot. I use this phrase a lot, but I also hear often the question, but what does it mean? And I'm not really sure I have a good answer. So, I called this panel to get the good answer.
Thank you, Sophia, and I want to thank all the panelists and participants, because I have no doubt that your participation today reflects an engagement that has saved lives. I think each of you have contributed to saving a life or many lives in these past 6 months. And that really is an incredible contribution, and a contribution to recovery. Human dignity is at the heart of this war, which is changing history. The Russian attack at human dignity, the Russian assault on Ukraine after the Maidan of dignity of 2013, 2014 is an explicit, violent, ideologically motivated, conscious desire and plan to limit human dignity, freedom, expression, association, democracy. And this assault on human dignity, the Russian attack, has affected global politics, diplomacy, economy, energy policy, ecology, agriculture policy. But it isn't just the Russian attack that is affecting this. If Ukraine had collapsed in 3 to 7 days, as many had predicted, there would not be this global change. It has been the Ukrainian defense of human dignity, the biblical David standing up to Goliath, that has affected this change, has forced people to think, and has already spurred recovery. Recovery that is motivated by a demonstration of human dignity and a quest for human dignity. Look at the European Union. After Brexit, we saw kind of fissures developing on the eastern side of the European Union. The European Union is in recovery. NATO being undermined by President Trump in a systematic way, Putin in an aggressive way, today is stronger than ever. Global solidarity has been sparked in a way around human dignity that I think has been unprecedented. Of course, it's fostered by technology, but the way people have come together globally, spontaneously, bottom up, network, neighbor to neighbor, is a response to the call of human dignity. And in Ukraine, the biggest issue will be life itself. We speak about the destruction of schools, hospitals, 15,000 miles of highways. We speak about the death, probably I think of at least 100,000 people now, the displacement of 14 million. And the resultant question will be, can we recover? Can we recover the people? The biggest question will be demography. Within 10 years, it is estimated that the population of Ukraine will drop to 30 million people, which will be a 40% drop in a 40-year period. And the question is, can that be recovered? What needs to happen for people to want to have people, for parents, for adults to want to have children, for people to want to live in Ukraine? And I think some of the fundamental questions that are being raised by the Russian aggression, and most importantly by the Ukrainian sacrificial defense of human dignity, are the most important questions for recovery. They're anthropological questions. They're questions: who is the human being? What is life? Most civilizations have been built on a hope for life after death. And it's hard to interview those who have died. I tried to listen at the cemetery today, at the grave of Artemy Demid and the others on the new field of burials in Lviv. What are they saying to us? With what kind of attitude did they sacrifice their life? I think there's going to be a recovery of senses, a recovery of reflection. It's not all commerce. What a fiasco has been suffered by this broadly practiced policy of basically economic engagement and interdependence will guarantee for us prosperity and peace. It has failed. When that policy has rejected principle, when it rejected human dignity, when it has rejected as it continues to do in the energy and oil policy. We don't look at what human rights Saudi Arabia is violating. I hope that in our recovery, we will think of not only economic factors, not only buildings, not only institutions, but the sacrifice and resistance of Ukrainians, I hope, will spur deep reflection on what it means to be human, what it means to be in solidarity, what it means to be a global community. And I think it is happening. But it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a linear, unidirectional process. But I think Ukraine is making a big contribution. And I think all the people that are here, you are here because these questions are at the heart of your concerns.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all panelists. I know we have planned this event for 1 hour, but I hope that another 10 minutes would serve us well, and I hope we can take them to answer very shortly some questions which our friends who registered have posted. And I would like to start, Anna, maybe with you. There was a question from Belgium about a community of Ukrainians who are there right now in one of the small cities or villages, and most of them, for example, don't speak English. They speak only Ukrainian or Russian, and the person who was asking the question is really asking, probably they will have to go for work which is not according to their qualification. Probably a couple of years of staying in Belgium will not make their ties with Ukraine stronger, but probably will make them will make them shorter. And how Belgians can help such people, how very concretely they can support them, and how to encourage that those people come back to Ukraine after a couple of years staying there.
Well, I obviously cannot recommend people, because this is right now a security and safety question, right? And everyone decides for themselves. However, a lot of the territories, in my view, in Ukraine are much, much safer than they've been in the beginning of the full-scale war. So there is less concern about the safety in that sense. I'm not sure what kind of angle of life your question regards, but when we're talking about education, I do believe that our government, civil society, universities, I think everyone has to be very kind of pushy with regard to. Well, yeah. On the one hand, we are very grateful that Belgium and other countries have admitted our children to their schools. However, it would be great if, with our help, with our support, with our concrete solutions, they could also offer the link to Ukrainian programs. In my view, Ukrainian government should have done much more in terms of securing that in the curriculum of the countries that are admitting our children, right? Providing for, like integrated program of Ukrainian history, language, literature, and geography for at least 2-3 hours per week would be still a great added value rather than nothing, right? It's great to learn Polish history or Belgian history, but what about Ukrainian history? So I think that there can be solutions. These are more like intergovernmental talks, but I think it could be done from the Belgium side in this case. If there is their wish, I think it's fairly easy to arrange this link with Ukraine and help in that sense to keep this connection even on the level of school. And if we are talking about the programs or availability of teachers, I think all things could be also solved in distance mode. So I'll be happy to chat with that person more on this, because there are concrete solutions that could be done.
Thank you. So we should try to integrate our people in foreign societies, but keep their ties with Ukraine as much as possible, and with Ukrainian programs as much as possible. Volodymyr, there is a question which I would like to address to you. Are Ukraine's youth being influenced by Western ideologies that are hostile to dignity of human person? If so, can Western allies become part of the solution? What are the most helpful ways to invest into the formation of Ukraine's youth? I know it's a difficult question, but I hope you have an answer, and quick one.
Yeah, I think Well, we are kind of going through kind of very difficult struggle for freedom, and there's a great kind of oppression regarding the human dignity, which is coming from Russia. And I think that it's kind of very difficult for me at this point to think about the kind of Western ideologies. I think that this country and young people here in Ukraine are learning a great lesson of what solidarity is, what human dignity is, and what it means kind of to invest their life into the future of this country. I'm kind of very happy to realize that we have wonderful first grade students who entered this university with that kind of idea and vision of investing into themselves in order to build this country. So I think somehow there's such a kind of massive thing going on a kind of very, very existential level at this moment. And I very much kind of hope that this society and the young people will kind of take advantage of this and kind of thinking and rethinking some very, very important questions. And I think that there's going to be a very important impact coming from Ukraine, outside of Ukraine, and to our kind of Western friends and partners. And this is why I think that kind of building and establishing international connections might be extremely important, and kind of fostering and kind of understanding what values are and what the evil of ideologies, different ideologies is or might be. So that's kind of my view on this question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vlad, I would like to address the question to you, and maybe you also have some very short reflections, because I saw you took a lot of notes during our discussion. So the question is, do you have any forecast for when we can start the recovery of the country, and when the end of the war will be victorious for us? It's I don't know how many million questions it is, but obviously more than 1 million.
Sophia, I hope you hear me. Do you? So I think the answer to the first question is that the reconstruction and recovery has already started. You know, it started in many liberated cities. It started in Kiev, and as I said, there is this fast recovery is ongoing now. It doesn't mean that it goes modernization, and this is about coming back to the issues of the social contract and the dream, and that Vladika was also saying about that, about recoveries of senses. And I think this is very much important. We are still on the way there. And the same as a war. I think the war will clearly will end with our victory, but it will also with Russia, it will end with our victory clear. Shall we win also the war against ourselves in the past? Is still a work which we need to do, you know. And I give you a very small example, and this is a reflection what Anna said, you know, about the schools, about integrated education. I fully support that, and I agree that Ukrainians should be integrated to the European and the Western societies. And I hope with this, you know, forceful, uncontrolled economic experiment, they will also demonstrate to Europe what Ukraine is European, and we are European. You know, we know it, but we need to demonstrate it somehow with their behavior, with their values, with their approaches, you know, also to communities where they will live. But also, let me say like this, I hope that the European citizens, governments, local administration, municipalities will help Ukrainian people to understand more what does it mean to be European. You know, how to live with within community, you know, what does it mean, the rule of law, what does it mean, the institutions about which the Vladika was saying. And I think this is still a path we need to go. And I think when these people come back to Ukraine, and I was speaking in the beginning about the opportunity which we need to give them, you know, the government, the business, you know, the state, other people, we will have a huge input of a new impulse and the demand for changes. I do hope that people will not come back to Ukraine and say, oh, how good coffee was in Lviv before the war, but they will say how good is to have the court system, managed by rule of law and not by oligarchs. This is, I think, the main message. Is not about how good a friend of mine is a doctor who I got because of the connections and I got there, but just because the education and the health will be inclusive. Other people, many people will get an access to the better education and better, the health. So this is exactly what Vladeka was saying about dignity. So this opportunity with dignity merged should be a part of our further step forward. This is my strong belief. And when we go there with full speed, the victory against of us before will be also in front of us.
Need to get more than one victory. Dmytro, my question very short to you is it okay that we reflect so much, and how much time do we still can take for reflection? Because sometimes I'm afraid maybe we should do more.
Yes, I think you're quite right. So we reflect a lot, but that's important because we are living in a traumatized society, and that is why we need. This is one of the ways, as psychologists say, how you behave with trauma. You need to reflect on that with many of the people. That is why international presentees is really important there. But about actions, I think that we already started it. So a number of the projects that I was talking about, so bottom up, and I think that all these initiatives, especially in the liberated cities, or all these initiatives of many of the Ukrainian institutions of connecting with international institutions, with the small projects, in the other activities, that is actually showing the way. So I think more push is needed, and yeah, we already started.
Thank you. Vladyko, the last question is to you, and the question is also from one of the registered participants, and it's about Andrei Sheptytsky, and the leader of Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, who lived through 7 changes of the government and who led our nation as the leader for 40 years, being a church leader. And his experience was probably something we could not understand for very many years, but I think we start to feel it a little bit right now. How can we take his notion that Ukraine is connecting East and West, and Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church is connecting East and West in a way? How can we bring it to our today's life, to what we live through?
Italians endure change of government. Sheptytsky endured 7 changes of states, different countries, Austria, Russia, Poland, Ukraine, Poland, Soviets, Nazis and Soviets. What made Sheptytsky and his leadership so outstanding, I think he's the greatest Ukrainian of the 20th century, is the integrity of his person. We need leadership, we need witness that is authentic. We need people that really love. We need people that serve. We need people that give. And do so in a very intelligent way, a way that takes into account history, that looks to the left and right, that is open but not wishy-washy. And Sheptytsky's leadership, his openness to the East and West, his knowledge of the past, gave him the wherewithal and the capacity to offer vision, to offer hope. Sheptytsky was dying he died November 1st, 1944. the World War wasn't over, but the second Soviet occupation that was to last for another 47 years in Western Ukraine had begun. And as he was dying on his deathbed, he spoke in a prophetic way about the revival of Ukraine. That Ukraine will live. He could speak with hope, and what he said in many ways has come true already, and I hope the rest will be fulfilled. I'm the son of World War II refugees. My parents, as 18-year-olds in 44, fled Ukraine, where 7 million people were being killed. I don't know how many schools were destroyed, hospitals. And yet, there is a recovery. There is a Ukraine. There's a country today that is offering inspiration to the world. There are incredibly grave challenges. There are terrible, tragic losses. But if we can live with hope, live with integrity, if we can live with an open mind, a sense of history, a real sense of dignity that is manifested when we celebrate the dignity of others, we will be able to follow the example of Andrei Sheptytsky. I thank you for bringing him up, the person that raised the question. You won't be disappointed if you look at the example of Sheptytsky. We've got a lot to learn from him. I think he's a good road sign for our future, for our recovery.
Thank you very much. I think with this note, we will be closing our discussion. I would like to thank very much to all of our panelists. I would like to say thank you very much for Vlad and Anna, who joined us through virtual connection. And I know it was not easy, but thank you very much for finding this time and being with us. Thank you, Volodymyr and Dmytro, for taking time from everyday activities and a lot of work here at the Ukrainian Catholic University. And today we started our studies, and we are so proud of that. You cannot imagine how proud can be the university when you start studies of your students. This is a simple thing, but we are so proud of that. And thank you, Vladiko, also for joining us. To all our international friends and partners, if you want to do one very concrete thing about Ukraine, our university, we have put a list of books and movies which you can buy to your library and which your students can use, and which are not based on Soviet propaganda, but which tells a lot about Ukraine and our history and what we believe in. You can always find this list of books and movies on our website, and you can share it with your libraries and just take the opportunity to go for them and to explore them. Thank you very much for everyone who came today to UCU. We also have participants in the audience. So thank you, and Slava Ukraini!